Son, and we can be with him eternally. And that's what we want to learn some tonight from the life of Christ. There's some examples that we can make application to our lives, that we may be closer to God. Just like Sunday morning, I'm going to try to keep the format, if possible, that Philip is keeping. Probably not to the stand and to the quality of Philip, but we're going to try to go through the study. First off, with the readings that were daily Bible readings that we're going through. I believe we are on, I believe it's number 84. So we have 84, 85, and 86 tonight, which is Judges 19 through 21 through 1 Samuel 1 through 3. And just like the life of Christ, we want to look at these readings and try to see if we can't learn some things from it. It's there for a purpose for us to learn and to help us in our walk. Start off in Judges, the 19th chapter. What is some of the things in Judges, the 19th chapter that took place? Something pretty horrendous takes place in Judges chapter 19.
A priest's concubine was molested, and it just shows the degradation of the people, how far they had fallen from being God's people.
Right. They're really far removed to do the things that they did to this concubine. And what does he do to her? Once he figures out that she's passed.
Takes her home, and then he picks her up, he sends her to the tribes
Right.
to show them how perverted some have become,
That's exactly right.
and to get some punishment.
Exactly. Okay, and then in Judges, the 20th chapter, what takes place?
Okay, he's 20, sorry.
The what?
That was 20,
Was it?
where he picks her up.
I thought that was 19.
I think I'm
Was it not? I may have messed up on that. But they go. Israel goes to war with Benjamin because of the men of Gibeon, because of what they had done to the concubine. Okay. So you see, when sin gets in our life, it can carry us to do some horrendous and some dark things. And there's applications for us for that. We can't remain in sin. It gets too comfortable for us. We need to recognize where we are, and we need to make things right with God as soon as possible. We don't need to become calloused from doing it.
Sin affects a lot more people than you think. You know, he says there that 22,000 men of Benjamin fell in one day because of that sin these had committed.
That's right. Just like you think divorce doesn't affect just one person. It affects the whole family, you know. So there's repercussions that happen because of sin. Okay, Judges chapter 21.
They're trying to find wives for the Benjamites because the rest of the tribes will not give any of theirs. They made that they will not let their females marry Benjamites, so they're without wives.
So what happened to the wives from the tribe of Benjamin?
They killed them all.
Right.
It was punishment.
That's exactly right. Okay? So just like Charlie said, there's repercussions and there's great cost when sin gets in your life. Okay, Ruth. The book of Ruth. That's number 85. Some pretty good things to learn and to study in the book of Ruth. in chapter 1, what takes place?
Both sons died.
Both sons die, okay? And what happens to the husband? Huh? He dies. So what does that make Ruth? I mean, what does that make, I'm sorry, not Ruth, but Naomi?
Widow.
A widow. Well, I think we could say a widow indeed. She has two daughter-in-laws. One's going to eventually go back. But Ruth does what? Stays with Naomi. Is there any application or lesson for us there?
Naomi lived in such a way that Ruth wanted to stay with her instead of with her people.
That's exactly right. That's one good example. As we read in the New Testament too, a widow indeed, who's to take care of her? If there's anybody before the body takes care of that widow? The family. So with the other daughter-in-law going back, here you have Ruth is there. And what does Ruth say to Naomi? You know, Naomi pleads to her, go back. You know, I don't have any sons. I'm not going to have any sons. And then you'll be so old, they'll have to grow up and, that's just not going to happen. So she tells Naomi something very significant. She says,
I'll go where you go, I'll live where you live, and I'll die where you die.
that's right. Only death is going to separate us. Your God's going to be my God. She had a chance to go back to Moab and worship idols. But you see from the influence of Ruth and the way she lived her life, there's a great example for Ruth there.
I hear people say, I can't make nobody else change. Naomi did. Her lifestyle made Ruth want to change.
That's right. That's exactly right. What's some of the attributes of Ruth? Some of her character.
She was humble.
Very humble, wasn't she? Very humble. And we'll see that later on in the story. She was compassionate. She was devoted. She was a hard worker. She took care of Naomi. She went to the fields and provided food for them. Okay?
She was faithful to God too.
Very faithful. And we'll see the lineage where it goes. Because eventually when we'll get to it in just a second, she marries Boaz, and who comes from Ruth and Boaz?
Jesus.
Obed, then that's right. Jesse and David, that lineage, all the way to Christ. Okay, chapter 2 of Ruth. What's happening?
That's where she goes and gleans in Boaz's field.
Mm-hmm. She gleans in Boaz's field. Okay?
And he gives them instruction to favor her.
That's right. And what did he give instruction to the men?
Leave something.
Leave some in the corner.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Chapter 3. What happens? She goes into Boaz and what?
To see if he can, to see if he's the closest of kin that can take her for a while.
Right. And he's not. So, but he goes through the process of whittling that down to where he can become her husband.
He kind of goes by the rules, don't he?
Yeah, sort of like the rules, follows the rules. There's something about somebody that follows the rules and somebody's a rule breaker, So, and he follows step by step, just like he was supposed to.
And Boaz's mother was Rahab.
Boaz's mother was
I think
Rahab.
that's correct. I think, yes.
Is that correct? It may-
Boaz's mother
Okay,
which Rahab,
okay.
who helped us find.
And the land?
Yeah, I just find that interesting.
Okay. And Jericho?
She's a prostitute.
Right,
At birth, but then she changed,
that's right.
and then she is another Boaz.
Okay, chapter 4. What takes place?
Married.
Mm-hmm.
It ends with the lineage of David.
That's right. So from this short book, what kind of lessons can we learn? Some things that we can take home with us.
And doing right has a reward, you know?
It does. It does. Doing the right, and this is a very difficult situation. Very difficult. I mean, they're looking for food to eat. It's very difficult. But you see, in this very difficult situation, you can see God being in control. He's in control of the things that's going on.
But you know, Naomi was up front with Ruth in the beginning, you know? I can't help you anymore.
Right.
But she did.
Yeah. She did. She gave her instructions on what to do with Boaz, didn't she?
Yes.
By going into him at the threshing floor.
And this was in the time of the judges, I think.
Yes,
So it was dark all around them and they did right.
that's right. A light in a dark world. We can see it in the lesson in Ruth that doing right's not always easy, but there comes rewards for going through that difficult situation. And Ruth was rewarded, and Naomi was rewarded. Any other thing? We can see that all people are important too. Naomi she was a what? Was she a Jew? No, she was a foreigner, wasn't she? God can use everybody. God can use everybody. Okay. Let's go to the next day, 1 Samuel 1 through 3. 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 3. What's going on with Hannah? She's child bearing, isn't she? And she makes a vow to do what? To give him to who? Give him to the Lord. Okay? She's wanting a child pretty bad. So bad that she's willing to give the child up. And she prays for it. And the Lord blesses her and Elkanah with a baby. And his name is Samuel. That's exactly right. And she gives him to the Lord. Okay? 1 Samuel chapter 2. What takes place?
So they take him and deliver him to Eli, then
Right.
delivers him to Eli.
And Eli has a great family, upstanding kids, doesn't he? Huh?
Verse 12, yes, they were corrupt.
They were very corrupt. Hophni and Phinehas was very corrupt. I think it said that they laid with the women at the house of God. There was a prophecy that was spelled out here against his family. It says that all of the descendants of his house would die in the flower of their age, so they weren't going to live long. Okay. Chapter 3. What happens? The Lord does what? Calls Samuel, doesn't he? Okay. So, Okay, that pretty much takes care of our readings. And now we're going to get to life of Christ. From Sunday morning, there was something that I overlooked. And where we was talking about the fig tree that was found withered. Back in Mark, and this is the only place that it's talked about. It's not talked about in Matthew or Luke, but in Mark, the 11th chapter, Mark 11. Mark chapter 11. We're talking about verses 19 through 25. If you get down towards the end, 25, and also look at 26, and it says, whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. What do you think that's in there for? What is he telling them? Why do you think he might be telling them this lesson on forgiveness? Is it important? Sure. What do you think is fixing to come? The Lord, the Lord only has 2 more days with the apostles. So he's packing everything in there that he can. The model prayer says what? Forgive. What did you say? Forgive what?
Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors.
Right. Okay, so forgiveness is a big thing. If we don't forgive, we're not going to get forgiveness. What are some things that are fixing to happen to him? Jesus is fixing to be gone. He's going to be killed. He's going to sit at the right hand of the throne of God, and they're going to be here on earth.
Well, and he asked God to forgive them from the cross, so he wants the apostles to do the same.
Right. That's a good example.
They have a big grudge against all of those people.
Right.
They want to even share the gospel.
So you see the things that was done to Christ, and Christ gives them an example on the cross, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Can you think of another example in the New Testament that took place? It's after the cross. I'll give you that clue. It's actually in Acts 7.
Stand next to it.
Yep, Stephen. Don't lay this charge to their feet. So it's important for them to see some of the things that's going to take place, that's going to happen to them, that they're going to have to forgive if they're going to be forgiven. Sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn. Okay.
They have when they're on the trade right here, shortly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like we talked Sunday about some of the deaths that the way they died. Wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. Oh, what time do we get out?
He goes our way to about 5 till.
5 till? Okay.
On a good day.
On a good day? I was going to go through some of the slides. I want to show you this. Sunday morning I threw everybody for a loop. I don't know if I threw everybody for a loop, but I know I threw Landon for a loop. Because the first one we went over the 17 periods, and the first one we had up there was creation. And I don't think the little kids, and I don't think everybody else had learned that, as it being the first was creation, but it was before the flood.
Philip always calls it creation. Walter, I think, calls it before the flood.
Before the flood?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to make everybody aware of that. So that was a little bit different there. We're running out of time. I think we're just going to go ahead and skip the slides that I had up there. And let's see if we can't get started on number 2. Christ's authority challenged. Christ's authority challenged. Let's start by reading Matthew chapter 21. And we want to read all Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then we'll look at the questions. Matthew chapter 21. And we'll read verses 23 through 27. Charlie, you can read that.
It says, when he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him while he was teaching and said, now what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority? Jesus said to them, I will ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I will also tell you of what authority I do these things. The baptism of John was from what source? From heaven or from men? They began reasoning among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he would say to us, then why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, we will fear the people, for they all regard John as a prophet. And answering Jesus, he said, we do not know. He also said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do things.
Do you think they didn't know?
They knew.
They knew. They just wouldn't admit it. They just would not admit it. So they had let their pride get in the way. Let's look at Mark the 11th chapter. Mark chapter 11, verses 27 through 33. 27 to the end of the chapter. Okay? You got that, Randy? Mark 11, 27 to the end of the chapter.
And they came again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests, scribes, elders came to him. They began saying to him, by what authority are you doing these things? Or who gave you this authority to do these things? And Jesus said to them, I will ask you one question, and you will answer me, and then I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? Answer me. And they began reasoning with one another, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, then why did you not believe him? Shall we say from men? They were afraid of the multitude, for all considered John to have been a prophet indeed. In answering Jesus, they said, we do not know. And Jesus said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things.
Okay. Now let's go to Luke chapter 20. Luke chapter 20. 1 through 8. Gene, have you got that? Luke 21 through 8.
Did you say Gene, David?
Yes, sir.
And it came about on one of the days while he was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, that the chief priests and scribes with the elders confronted him. They spoke, saying to him, tell us by what authority you are doing these things, or who is the one who gave you this authority? And he answered and said to them, shall I ask you a question, and you tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? Oops, hit the wrong button there. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. And they answered that they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things.
Okay. So what was Jesus doing the day, but what did he do the day before here? We were on Tuesday. What did he do on Monday?
He was telling them, I'm from the Father, and I teach you what the Father says. And they wanted to kill him because he made himself equal with God.
Right. Exactly. He cleanses the temple, doesn't he? So, and he shows his authority by doing that. He told them that they had made his father's house a what? Den of thieves instead of what? A house of prayer. Okay? So yeah, let's keep in mind that and his authority is being challenged here the day after he had come in and cleansed the temple. Under 2 right here, it says that where's it at? His authority, Monday, Jesus exercised his authority by cleansing the temple, calling it my house, and allowing people to call him the Son of David. That leads the religious people to just what we just read, question by what authority did he receive this authority. And now we're fixing to go through 3 parables. He talks about 3 parables. And we see how that the religious leaders are seeking to entrap him so that they could take it.
You know, I believe the first one would have been enough for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is one of several questions raised in an attempt to trap the Lord. However, the Lord turned the question on the querist and by so doing showed their hypocrisy. First, what was their question? By what authority are you doing this? Okay? And what had Jesus done numerous times which indicated to honest-hearted people?
He healed the sick, raised the dead.
I mean, what else? What more could he do? What else did he need to do? You know, he had done it all. He showed them all kind of signs, all kind of signs, and one that had the heart to receive it could have seen that. And I don't know. I honestly believe. I really think they did see it. They just didn't want to recognize it. Because they didn't want to give up their position.
Because it said they didn't want to answer these from men because they don't stone us because they all these people believe.
Right, right. Exactly. So, any comment or question?
Verse 16, when he said that the Lord would come to those vine dressers and destroy those and would give it, the vineyard, to somebody else. And they understood that he was talking about them being the scribes and leaders of Israel. And then they said, may that never happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it was happening as they spoke.
Right. Exactly right. Look at C. It says Jesus turned the argument to the baptism of John. If they answered his question, like Charlie said, what was his question to them? Where was it from? Okay? Was it from heaven or was it from men? And he had them between a rock and a hard place. And how many times does he do this to them?
Over and
And they just don't learn. They just don't learn. Okay?
it just shows their greed of them wanting that position that they had. And knowing if Christ was true, that this, they wasn't gonna have that position anymore.
That's right. That's right. Under the notice C, it says Jesus' question was inseparably connected with theirs. Jesus, of course, did not derive his authority from John the Baptist, but John had testified plainly to the messiahship of Jesus and had in no uncertain terms designated Jesus as immeasurably greater than himself. What does John the Baptist say about Jesus?
In decrease, and Jesus would increase, and he couldn't even unloose the straps of his sheep.
That's
He was
right.
not even worthy to unloose the straps of his sheep.
That's right, over in John chapter 1, verse 27. Okay? So, someone much greater than John. Now, if the Pharisees admitted that John was a heaven-sent messenger or witness, of which fact his baptism was propounded as a test, since it was a religious ordinance introduced on his authority, then John had already answered the Sanhedrin that Jesus derived his authority from his messiahship. And hence, all the Sanhedrin had to do to satisfy their minds was simply to believe John. But if, on the other hand, the Pharisees rejected John's pretensions and claims as a heaven-sent messenger in the face of the almost universal popular conviction, then what use was there for Jesus to present his claims to so blind, bigoted, and unreasoned a body? So they wasn't going to hear it no matter what. You know, you see the Pharisees, they're doing all they can. And Jesus is stopping them in their tracks. And the plan is not going to proceed. God's plan for Christ is not going to proceed till Christ is ready for it to proceed. I don't know if you remember in our previous studies, it said numerous times, it's not yet my time. It's not yet my time. And then we talked about, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Okay? It's on his time frame. If you think about the, and we're probably getting into more lessons, but there's a point I'd like to make that I forgot what I was saying. It was good.
He gets work to.
Maybe it'll come back to me. But Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem. And you think about his trials and everything, you think he was as he was in the garden, they come and get him at night when the people don't know it. The kangaroo court at night where they have false witnesses about him. And to the human eye, it looks like he's not in control. This is just a snowball, but if you think about it, he is in total control, even of this trial that's been ramrodded. Total control. There's a prophecy that we can read that tells us when Jesus is going to die. It's on the Passover. Okay? So he knows the day.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd have the Pharisees that said to Jesus, if I knew 2 more days and we'll be dead, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. He knew when, because he's going to be the sacrificial lamb for us. He's going to be our Passover. Just like what happened in Egypt. Okay? So he knew exactly the day when it was going to take place. Probably the hour when it was going to take place. So that's just faith building to know that he is in that much control of what's happening and him being put to death. That's just unfathomable to me. But he's in total control of the whole situation. It just doesn't look like it is at this time. But he's in total control of it. So that's just one thing that comes to my mind. Anybody got a comment or a question about anything?
It's like you said, all the Pharisees and the chief priests thought they were in charge, but they weren't. They was doing everything he wanted done was taking place.
They were a puppet.
That puppet.
They were a puppet. Even Satan thinks he was winning. And it's flipped on him. So, interesting, good. D, they reasoned among themselves, summarized, what had John the Baptist taught concerning Jesus?
He was the Son of God, he was the Messiah.
Yep. He was the Son of God. He was the light, wasn't he? He was the Messiah. But they didn't want to see it. Among other things, what were people to believe as they were baptized of John? In Acts chapter 9 and verse 4. That they should what? What?
They don't want to come after him.
Mm-hmm. That they should believe on him that came after him. What then would it have meant concerning Jesus for these religious leaders to confess that John's baptism, and consequently all John taught, was from heaven? You just can't get past this.
That Jesus was sent from God. And
He was-
and had all authority.
He was the Messiah. There's no getting around it. There is no getting around it. And they're just not going to have it. What does that tell you about the heart of these religious leaders to know that this is the Messiah in front of them? The one that they've been looking for. And they're still trying to put him to death.
He wasn't what they wanted.
It was not. They were looking for something else. They were looking for something else. So that just shows you their heart and their pride that they had in themselves.
The things that they were wanting, he messed up were worldly things. Their power, their prestige, the positions they held. He disturbed all those worldly things that they desired and they wanted. And it seems that the ones who were looking through spiritual eyes, although they did not understand it all, those are the ones who were believing and confessing and following him.
Mhm. So what application is there for us today on that, what you just said?
Don't get caught up in this world.
Don't get caught up in this world.
Because it will take Jesus from you. And they allowed it to take Jesus from them because he was right there in their face. They did hear his words. They did see his works, both of which testified he was God's son. They saw it on numerous occasions.
Mhm.
But that is some of what they were just so caught up in the worldliness side of it.
Right.
That they were blindsided, even if it was by choice, spiritually.
Yep. Good point. Any other comment? Note, if people submitted to John's baptism, it is obvious they would have believed all he preached. Hence, they would have believed all his testimony concerning Jesus. Okay. G, they reasoned that if they confessed the baptism of John was from heaven, Jesus would say what?
You know,
Why didn't you believe? Why not? On the other hand, if they said it was from men, what was the consequence?
Stoned to death.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear of the multitude, wouldn't they? How was their hypocrisy shown?
They said, we don't know what
But did they?
Yes.
They did know, didn't they? Said, we don't know. But they did know.
just sat there and collaborated and reasoned together to come up with an answer.
I can see over now. What do we do now?
Yeah. What's next? Where do we go from here? Yeah.
And they chose a lie.
Right. what, over in Revelation, what does it say about liars? They ain't gonna be where?
Lake of fire.
Yep, they ain't going to heaven. Okay? And this is religious leaders now. Religious leaders. Here, Jesus forced them to choose. Either they would have to tell a lie, which is what they did, or acknowledge that John's baptism was from heaven. If it were from heaven, then all John said about Jesus was true. Jesus was God's son, and they were mistaken for opposing him. Their hypocrisy was evident, and Jesus' question was designated to reveal it to others. The conflict is just the beginning. Okay? We got just a few minutes. I hate to get into the parables, but the parable of the two sons. There's some good lessons in there. Say that he cleanses the temple on Monday, and here we have, one day earlier was Monday, and then he cleanses the temple here on Tuesday. And then he tells them this parable of the two sons. And it's going to spell out exactly what they need to change. Look at Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21. See if we can't briefly get started on this first parable. We got about 3 or 4 minutes. Matthew 21. And we probably will not read all the scripture. Matthew 21, 28 through 32. Matthew 21, 28 through 32. Kirsten, would you read that for me? 28 through 32, Matthew 21.
What do you take? A man had 2 sons, and he went to the first and said, Son, go and work in the vineyard today. And he answered, I will not. But afterward he changed his mind and went. And he went to the other son and said the same. And he answered, I go, sir, but did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? And they said, the first. Jesus said to them, Truly I say to you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him, and even when you saw it, you did not afterward change your minds and believe him.
Okay. These parables, these 3 that's coming up, they're directed directly to who?
Chief priest and
Pharisees, the hypocrites.
Right. The chief priests, scribes, Pharisees. This first son, what does he do?
He repents and goes.
Right. He changes, doesn't he? So what, and that's a good thing. How does that reflect with us? He repents and he changes. Symbolic of a Christian repenting and changing and following God. Could be us following God. Okay? The second son, what did he say?
I go.
I go, he did go. So, it goes back to Revelation, what we just talked about. He's what? He's a liar. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. And what is that, how does that, where's that application for us as a Christian?
Those that say they believe in God but don't do what he said, that's what they are.
That's right. Goes back to what we was talking about Sunday morning, about fruit. If you claim to be a Christian, you should have works and fruits comparable to what a Christian should have. Okay? So that's an application for us. We got to have the right fruit as a Christian. Just becoming a Christian is not good enough. That's just the start. That's just the beginning. Okay, our time is up. So we will, I guess Philip will be back Sunday, and he's probably will review all the way back to the fig tree. I'm guessing. So